Hey, book besties, welcome back to another Wednesdays con Wilma. Hopefully, you liked, shared, and subscribed already. And if you're new here, welcome. Happy New Year as we are on the last Wednesday of 2025. Whew, it's been a long year. Long year. I know everybody's like, it's 365 days. These days felt like months, these months felt like years, all in one, wrapped in not a cute bow. It was a lot going on. However, the year is coming to an end and we are heading into 2026. But before we do, let's get into 2025 wrap up. For 2025, I set out a lot of big reading goals that I did not meet. I did not. I tried. A lot of stuff was going on. And so for the new year, I want to be realistic with myself, be softer with myself. I was just very excited and like, oh yeah, got to put out content and all this other stuff. But like with my lifestyle, with the things that's going on, I want to make sure that I do like good deep dives and recommendations. So that's like my switch out. But I didn't even get into like, I didn't make a dent in my TBR like I want to do. I didn't even start the series of the two books that I have. I have the Interview with the Vampire series and the Hunger Games. Didn't even get to that. Um I didn't even wrap up my Debil Tirar Más Fotos series, book inspired series, nicely as I wanted to because life was lifing. And so I need to put in some like bumpers for myself so that that makes sense for me. I realized that I like the memoir genre this year. I read a lot of memoirs. Beverly, Viola Davis, Giada, like all of those were like from strong women's point of views. I really did enjoy that, like walking through their life points and getting like really good um advice from them, from especially from strong women. But overall, I really did enjoy the memoir genre that I didn't realize I liked before. So that was also pretty cool to figure out and find out for myself. I've always been an avid reader, but like categorizing myself, like, oh, I like fiction or nonfiction. Like when I began to do this consistently last year, I realized, oh, I really like historical fiction, right? Like that's really near and dear to my interests. I'm also liking thrillers more. But definitely this year was by far the year of the memoir for me. I realized that I like the memoir genre this year. I read a lot of memoirs. Beverly, Viola Davis, Giada, like all of those were like from strong women's point of views. I really did enjoy that, like walking through their life points and getting like really good um advice from them, from especially from strong women. But overall, I really did enjoy the memoir genre that I didn't realize I liked before. So that was also pretty cool to figure out and find out for myself. I've always been an avid reader, but like categorizing myself, like, oh, I like fiction or nonfiction. Like when I began to do this consistently last year, I realized, oh, I really like historical fiction, right? Like that's really near and dear to my interests. I'm also liking thrillers more. But definitely this year was by far the year of the memoir for me. So I wanted to end the year with my top three books, and the first is War Against All Puerto Ricans by Nelson A. Dennis. This was a reread for me in this year, and it was also part of the Viviti al Masfoto series that I didn't wrap up. Don't remind me. I'm reminding you. I know. Mind your business. Um, it was a reread, like I had stated in the previous video when I first did the full thing, and it was harder to read with a lot more context that I did have prior to. But reading it wasn't just like a sitting of it was more like a sitting of unlearning, of remembering, of reclaiming. It helped with a lot of conversations with some family members of being like, hey, do you remember this? Were you taught this? Was mainly a big conversation, especially my mom. She's from Ponce. So just even asking her about like, were you taught about the Ponce massacre? And she was just like, not really. That's not something that was really talked about. So like bridging those gaps culturally was really I really enjoy when a book does that for me. Like when it, I'm a when oh, palabras, when either I do like a deeper dive and jump off and be like, oh, I want to know more about this, or where it just helps me explore like better conversation. It gave really good historical context. that I had already felt in my body and in my mind and my spirit as a Puerto Rican. And then it exposed and like made me reach out and learn a little bit more about colonialism, political violence, how media and propaganda shapes views or has shaped views in the past and in the present. Um, this book validates like generational trauma that gets dismissed as too political or too much. Um, and again, for those who are on the island who may not learn these things or have to go kind of like the same way we do as in the diaspora, we have to like learn about the island and our culture on our own because it isn't something that's like fully immersed in the curriculum. For me, this book connected a lot of the dots, right? With identity, resistance, survival. Um, it gave a lot of frameworks as to why a lot of like either my family members or those family members of the diaspora like felt like they had to leave with like especially when it came into the conversation about Operation Bootstraps, and how they had to make a living in really big diasporic communities like Chicago, New York, Philly, um, Jersey, and Florida, right? Like all those main key places where folks migrated to. Um, it was really eye opening to learn a lot about it and deepen and speak a lot about Puerto Rican history in ways that you normally can't always find in certain platforms. And one of the way the storytelling and the reporting, um that was like my main like because a lot of the accounts would be written as if the author was there, and that's not really like historically sound. But however, it did edge in the space of like it is your responsibility to do additional work, right, and to do additional research and things of that nature. This book really changed a lot of great conversations. It also like poured into my other creative project with Boricua Culture Mix Pod and helped arm me with like a good foundation of truth and move forward in those spaces. So, War Against All Puerto Ricans is one of my top three for 2025, and it should be in one of your readings as well. Coming in número dos is a book that I do not have in my possession because I let it be borrowed out. It is Velorio by Xavier Navarro Aquino. This book was, woo, is one of those books that I would read, sit for a minute, digest, because although it's like Puerto Rico in the few days and the aftermath of Huracan Maria, it's also like fantasy in the sense of like how people came in, but it's also real because you have this raw emotion of folks trying to survive the island and the overall theme of grief and grieving and the subtle themes of where do we go from here and who really saves us in these spaces. This one stayed with me a lot. And it spoke again to my Puerto Rican identity, the relationship with death, memory, and like a collective grief, because everyone in this book was grieving or losing in some fashion due to the hurricane, due to the political stance, due to like the cults forming or regime shifting that was happening in the book. Um, it really resonated in those spaces, right? It mirrors how I move through the world, right? Like you can hold joy and mourn at the same time. So those two dichotomies working together, it honored rituals, silences, and humor, and it gave a depiction of what that grief looks like, for those who one on the island felt it, lived it, and for those on the diaspora who waited in anxiety to make sure that our loved ones were okay. How do we help from this side? What could we do? You really felt that it was very palpable in that space while reading the book. And then it also still reminded as you're reading like what acts of resistance do you do, right? Because not everybody was just like going with the regime shift and everybody was trying to figure out their moves in survival and in grief, right? One of the main characters literally could not get rid of her sister because she could not bear the thought to mourn and recognize and be confronted with this actual death, that although everyone around her is like, hey, this the body's rotting, what are we doing about this, but they also didn't want to confront him because they also knew their own grief. And some folks in the book didn't even know where their loved ones had ended up due to the hurricane. So it is one that the storytelling is beautiful, the world building, right? Again, it's Puerto Rico, but still kind of like switched in a way in this fantasy shaped world. It's utilizing real life context of Huracan Maria. Um, I also appreciated that it did not victimize the characters in this way, in the way that I feel like a lot of like art or commentary about Huracan Maria has come out, this conversation of like they were just waiting to be saved, and it's like they were figuring these things out by themselves, whether it was in the Campo rural areas or in the metro area. Puerto Ricans were doing things for themselves because they knew they could not count on this government. And so I appreciated that world building and world view as well, because a lot of the depictions were like, again, the propaganda would like to make it believe like they were just waiting on their laurels for some miracle to happen, and that's not the case. My last major book for the year was Colleen Hoover's All of Your Perfects. This was the last book that I reviewed. It was one of my most vulnerable and honest reviews in real life timeline, adding on to a public. Sometimes doing content like this can be weird because you're like, who's watching this? Who really is like connecting with this? And then I will say that putting out that particular review, it strengthened my heart and care for humanity. The amount of like DMs that I received of like either A, they're going through the same thing, or B, they've gone through something so heart wrenching and yet still pulled through to the other side. I appreciate all of the outreach and outpour that came from that posting. This book, like I stated in the video prior, was an easy read because it's not like it was an oldie time type of thing where it's like, in that space, like you could follow through, but the subject matter was hard to get through, especially as someone who's going through the subject matter of infertility, or fertility journey, however, you want to like glass half empty, half full conversation you may want to have. This was very emotional read. This book, as a casual reader, sure, you could read it, but as someone who's carrying like the experience around fertility and grief, it really put a lot of forefront. It gave a lot of conversation, and it also helped shape a lot of conversations between my husband and I. And like, what are our next steps? What is our threshold? Where do we pivot? It helped a lot in real life too. It gave language to like an unspoken loneliness that you can feel when going on this journey, that you didn't even like knew could exist. It validated what like how love and disappointment can coexist at the same time. In the sense of, at the end of the book, they decide to enjoy their lives and enjoy their marriage and recognize that this is just parenthood isn't going to be in the cards for them, but they still have enough love for each other. And I think that that was also a very beautiful tie to the story. I saw a TikTok that read like, we deserve to be parents, but in the meantime, we're gonna love each other, we're gonna enjoy our marriage, we're gonna laugh, we're gonna dance, and we're gonna live our lives. And I think that that's a great way to sum up the fertility journey. Instead of getting wrapped up on being intimate, peeing on the stick, hoping for the outcome, it's like that can't be your everyday schedule. Like you should be enjoying those moments with your partner, and doing your best to hold that balance and being kind and soft with your body and with yourself. um the book really meets you in a space where sometimes you don't even know that what you need to explain, or softening your approach. Like I said, it really did a really good job of like, how do we pivot with hope, and like at the expense of not feeling like you gave up on this, but like, where do we go from here? And like, it just, Colleen did a really good job of like closing that door gently. I think that had she been like, and then they got pregnant, I think for a lot of folks who it doesn't happen for, it would have felt like this like fairy tale sort of kind of thing. And so I really do enjoy how she did that. But overall, it was a very emotional read for me. And for those who may be going or on this fertility journey, put the book down when you need to, take a deep breath, breathe, have your sisterhood or brotherhood or, whoever in your corner to have these conversations with. Um, but it really did give a good depiction of like how a relationship can erode when you don't communicate how you're feeling, specifically around fertility. They were both trying like not to harm each other and hurt each other's feelings, and they really needed to have a really good conversation with each other about like, hey, this seeing you not have this happen for us is hurting me, and so like, what do we do from that? But because they loved each other so much and wanted parenthood with one another, it just kind of like really thinned out the relationship and the marriage. Bueno, those are my top three 2025 picks. I look forward for 2026 to freeform read. Pick up whatever I want, read it and enjoy it, and give you really good book reviews and book recommendations. I have a lot of good things planned that I'm currently reading, so that will be next week's video. And if you haven't done so far, please like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate the community that I've been building, follow by follow, comment by comment. It really, really warms my heart to see this organically grow. And I want to make sure that I ensure be more consistent for 2026. So, dale, have a good one. Curl up with a good book. Read what entertains you, and you will always be entertained. And we shall see each other in 2026. Dale. I did get to read some pretty cool books. I also got to buy some really cool books. For 2026, I do want to cease with the overconsumption and really hone in on either going to the library. It's a lot. Like, I truly don't have much space on my TBR cart and my bookshelf, so I just don't want to continue that practice. I want to be intentional, and I want to do a little bit more like book swapping with my friends. So, book besties, if you have some books that you want me to read and I have some that you want to read, let's switch it out. Let's do that. Other than that, I really wanted to continue that space and honor that for myself, because realistically, I'll like get all these books and like really be inspired and want to do all these things, and sometimes I just don't have the time. Even if I read a few pages a day, it's still not enough to like get into like the way I want to read and recommend out.